Imagine if there was a way you could improve your reading and writing SAT score by 40 to 100 points overnight without you learning any new skills. Just implement one strategy and it just magically increases your score. I'm here to tell you that that magical strategy does exist. Here's proof on the screen right now. This has worked for every single one of my students who I've personally tutored, as well as the students who bought my digital paid SAT course, as far as I know. And I'm about to give it away completely for free. The fundamental concept behind this strategy is one simple thing. Accuracy matters a lot more than speed. And you have to understand this. Accuracy is king. Now, let me break a belief of yours. Think back to the last SAT practice test you took. How many questions did you run out of time on in reading and writing? And what I mean by running out of time on is you didn't read anything in the question, you just guessed what the answer was. Okay, think back to the last practice test. Most of you would say 0. There were 0 questions where you didn't read anything in the question and you just blindly guessed what the answer was. I know this because I asked tons of students this question. This is one of the first questions I asked every single student, and most of them say 0. Some students say 1. I haven't heard a single student say anything more than 1. This was my last reading and writing SAT score. In August 23rd, 2025, I scored a 770 in reading and writing. There were still lots of times where I still run out of time on the hardest question on the test. How delusional is it for you, who is scoring somewhere below 720, to think that you can answer every single question, when I, who score a 770 consistently and tutor the SAT for a living, still runs out of time? The SAT is not designed for a high schooler to be able to answer all the questions. I want you to completely forget about answering all the questions, but don't worry, this will only benefit you. What happens when you try to answer every single question, even though you don't have the skills to actually be able to do it, is you start shortcutting. You won't fully understand the passage. You won't fully understand every single word in the answer choices. And the SAT is going to eat you alive. You're going to fall for the traps in the wrong answer choices like clockwork. Okay, the SAT is 99 freaking years old. You can bet that they are extremely good at designing questions, at making wrong answer choices to entice you, especially the really hard questions. They are extremely good at designing wrong answer choices that seem right when you don't understand the passage well. You would think that you have at least a 25% chance to get the correct answer, right? Because there's 4 answer choices. If you just pick the letter randomly, there's a 1/4 chance that you get the correct answer. However, what happens when you skim the passage is you actually have a less than 25% chance of getting the correct answer, especially for the hard second module questions, if you do run into them. Because you're way more likely to fall for one of the wrong answer choices. It's just how the test is designed. They are really good at making wrong answer choices seem correct when you don't understand the passage well. So actually, you would have done better if you just didn't even answer the question. Like, if you only give yourself maybe 1 minute to answer this type of question, you have a less than 25% chance of getting the correct answer. You would have done better if you just randomly selected a letter. Now let's get into the actual strategy. I'm going to search up SAT score calculator on Google and click on the first link. This is albert.io. This is a great way to predict your score and to strategize based on how many questions you think you got right in each module. I'm going to just forget about math, make those 0, and we're going to only look at reading and writing because that's what this video is for. But by the way, this strategy does apply to math too. You can utilize a lot of this in math. Okay, reading and writing, let's just pick like an average score. Yeah, 560. Okay, that's okay. Okay, let's pretend you are scoring a 560 in reading and writing right now. Now, the strategy for a 560 reading and writing score is, I would say for module 2, don't do the hardest 7 questions in module 2. For module 1, don't do the hardest 3 questions. We just don't do them at all. And what do I mean by the hardest 7 questions? Is I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but basically the 7 questions that take the most time on the module, don't do them. I know this is module 1, but let's pretend this is module 2, and our goal is to leave the 7 hardest questions. We'll just not do them. Okay? I would definitely do grammar, which you should definitely watch my grammar stuff if you haven't already, my grammar videos. You can pretty much guarantee you get these right within a ridiculously short amount of time. You should definitely watch my stuff. But basically, these are really short, at least in terms of the time you spend on taking them, and also they're really easy. For transition questions, these are 1-word answer choices, 2 sentences, 3 sentences max in the passages. These are really fast as well. For bullet point questions, pretty much all of these questions, you just need to read what the student wants to do, and then just do it. You don't have to read the bullet points for most of these. These are really fast too. And again, I'll actually make separate videos to explain each of these questions in the future, by the way. And vocab questions, these are really fast too. I understand though that if you don't know a vocab word in the answer choices, it makes it a lot harder to get the correct answer, which I do keep into account in my strategy. So don't worry about that. But these are really fast to solve as well. This is 2 sentences. It's normally 3 sentences max. There's 1 word answer choices. I mean, this one's 2, but you get the idea. It's really short. Okay, you can solve these really fast. And then the questions that are left is what I call the 10 dense reading comprehension questions. Now, it might not be 10, sometimes it's 11, sometimes if you get lucky, it's 9, but it's just the questions that look really long, okay? There's really long answer choices, really long passages. These questions take the most time, so I would just, out of these 10, I would pick the 3 easiest looking, because again, we're leaving 7 questions when it's not doing them. So I think, I don't know what the answer is, by the way, so I'm just gonna just randomly guess. But let's say this one doesn't look that bad, honestly. Yeah, it doesn't look that bad. Especially if this is the second module, I would definitely do this one. This one does not look bad at all. I mean, it's overall structure. Usually these questions, and again, I'll mix up the videos going over like the different types of questions and things like that, and how to specifically solve them. But this one doesn't look that bad. I think it's pretty easy. This is like a poem. I would definitely skip this one because poems usually take a longer time to solve. Oh, definitely this one is really long answer choices. So you can tell it's kind of subjective. Everyone will have different questions that they skip. Whatnot is kind of based on experience. But generally, like the ones that look long, just don't do them. Main idea questions, usually these aren't that bad. I'll probably do this one. Okay, I know what the answer is. I'm just guessing, just a demonstration. This one, I mean, it's like a play, I guess. Yeah. I'll probably skip that one. It's like Shakespeare is a really old passage. In my opinion, it's probably kind of long. And the answer choices are kind of long too. So skip that one. I like these ones a lot. It's only 1 sentence. So you have to read in the passage. And then the answer choices aren't that bad either. So I'll probably do this one. Let's guess the answer. But yeah, I would say, yeah, we did 3, right? So let's say that was the 3 easiest questions. So what are left is just the 7 questions in the 10 dense reading comprehension questions. Out of the 10, there's 7 left that I think are probably on the harder side. Let's do a bit of reasoning, okay? Somebody at a 560, how long do you think they would spend on average for the hardest 7 questions? How long do you think these questions would take them on average? I think 3 minutes on average for each of the hardest 7 questions. But let's lowball it, okay? Let's be super conservative. I'm thinking 2 minutes on average for each of the hardest 7 questions. And let's say 2 minutes on average for the 3 hardest questions in the first module too. Okay? It would have taken them 2 minutes on average for each of the hardest 7 questions. Now, how much extra time is that if they don't do the hardest 7 questions then? The 7 questions that take the most time, they just don't do them. How much time are they getting back? 7 times 2, because the 7 questions is 2 minutes on each of them that they would have spent on those questions. 14 minutes then. Again, it's super conservative, but we're saying 14 minutes back on the second module. And 3 times 2, that's 6 minutes back on the first module. So they pretty much get an extra 14 minutes by not doing the hardest 7 questions, and 6 minutes by not doing the hardest 3 questions in the first module. Okay. Not only would they get an extra 14 minutes back, the test becomes significantly easier now. The entire reason why the second module is hard is because of these longest taking 7 questions. If these questions were just gone, you just didn't do them at all, the test becomes significantly easier because all that are left is just the grammar questions, the transition questions, the vocab questions, the one-word answer choice questions, basically, and the bullet point questions, but you don't have to read the bullet points for pretty much all those questions. You just need to read the 5 words that what the student wants and then just look for the answer choices. Those are extremely fast. It's a much easier test. Honestly, 10 times easier. Because the entire reason why the second module is hard is just gone now. It's just a much easier test. So you get a super easy test now. So a easy test. And you get an extra 14 minutes to do the easy test. Okay? Module 1, same thing. It's a much easier test because all the hard questions, the longest taking questions are gone now. Okay? I think at this point, you wouldn't be surprised if this person had a 560 got every single question right that they did do, and the only questions they got wrong are the questions that they didn't do. Okay, now I understand that they might get some vocab questions wrong, because usually there's like 1, 2, maybe even 3 vocab questions that the student just doesn't know at all, and like probably you experienced this, that you just don't know what the vocab words are, so it's really hard to get those right. So I understand that, so I take that into account with my strategy. Okay, but I think like the grammar, transitions, the bullet points, the 3 questions that they did do out of the dense reading comprehension questions, I think it's pretty reasonable to pretty much guarantee they get those right, because those are the easy questions. They just need to make sure they fully understand everything. They can spend as long as they want pretty much on those questions. They just need to fully understand them and make sure it's correct. Okay, and I actually go over how to guarantee you get every single one of these questions right later in this video as well. But this is just so far. For now, let's just go to the score calculator again and put in these questions that they got right. So again, they left 3 questions blank, and we're assuming they got everything right that they did do. And second module, they left 7 questions blank. So they got 20 questions correct. That is a 660 reading writing score. And you're forgetting that we can still guess on the questions that are left. Right? There's 3 questions that are left that they didn't do. You can guess on them. Maybe they get 1 question right here, and they get unlucky and they only get 1 question right here. Now it's a 690. Okay, they got all the questions that they did do correct, and then they guessed on the questions that they didn't do. That is a 690. We went from a 560 to a 690 with no change in their actual skill. It's just a shift in their mindset and how they approach the test. You can improve 130 points just by doing that. Okay, but now let's assume that it was a horrible day for them. It's the worst day ever, and they did horrible on this test, even with this strategy. So let's say they got 3 vocab questions wrong. Okay, they got 1 vocab here, got 2 vocab questions wrong here. Let's say they made a mistake here. Let's say they made 2 mistakes here. That's still a 600. That's still a 40-point increase from an okay scenario when they were using the previous strategy that everyone uses. Okay, a 560 from a 600, and this is the worst case scenario for this strategy. Okay, there's pretty much no reason to not do this strategy. You don't have to learn any new skills. You can improve your reading writing score by tons, like life-changing amounts, and there's pretty much no risk. Okay, this is actually safer if you do this strategy, by the way. Like, I've tested this. Like, if you normally do what you currently do and you just rush the questions and you don't fully understand everything, your score varies a lot when you do that. However, this strategy, your score tends to be pretty stable. Like, whatever score you get, you usually consistently get that if you just do this strategy. Now, obviously, not everyone has a 560 reading writing score, so how do you specifically improve your own reading writing score using this strategy? This is how. So I would probably screenshot your screen right now. This is just a general guide in terms of where your current score is at and what I recommend, how many questions you don't do. And how to read this, by the way, is this is just the current score range you're at. And by the way, this is the current score range, like what your last practice test was. This is not where you want to be. Okay, this is just where you're currently at. And if you do improve your score using this strategy, then you can move on. Okay, but first do where you're currently at. This is how many questions you don't do. And this is just a general guide again. Everyone's different. This is just what has worked for my students in terms of how many questions they shouldn't do and what's worked well. However, it could vary for you. Okay, it does vary a lot. So let's say you are at a 620. And I recommended that you don't do the last 6 questions, or like the hardest 6 questions in the second module. And you have 6 questions left, but you have tons of time left, and you're really confident all the questions that you did answer you got right. Then go ahead, do more questions. You can do 2 more, and then end up not doing 4 questions instead of 6. It varies from person to person. Okay, and how you read this top section is just in case you get the easy module, because if you don't know, the SAT is adaptive, meaning if you do well in the first module, you will get a harder second module, but if you don't do well in the first module, you get an easier second module. And you know you got the easy module because the questions are a lot easier in the second module than they are in the first module, and you know you got the hard module because the questions are a lot harder in the second module than in the first module. Okay, but if you do get the easy module, this is how you rate it. You just don't do 1 question. But if you get the hard module, you don't do 9 questions. And usually you only get the easy module if your score is 520 or below. So if you're like above the 520, then I don't think you get the easy module. If you do get the easy module in like this range, I would just don't do 1 question then. Okay, and this will also work for a higher score range. Let's say you're currently scoring a 720, which would make you fall under this range, and I would recommend you don't do the last or the hardest 2 questions in the second module. That will improve your score a lot because you're aiming for this. Right? If you actually do this, instead of rushing the questions at like this part, you just forget about the last 2 questions, the hardest 2 questions, right? Just don't do them. And use that extra time to just make sure you got all the questions that you did do correct. And you'll improve 50 points if you do that. And obviously, maybe you make mistakes, maybe you got a vocab question wrong, you got other stuff wrong. That's still 750, that's still higher, 30 points higher than what you're currently doing. So what I'm trying to say is this strategy works and you should just do it. And I'm about to make this strategy even better by teaching you how to verify your answer. So with the time you have left by not doing the hard questions, you can guarantee that you get every single question that you do correct, and the only questions you get wrong are the questions you run out of time on. So then you can start scoring scores like this. And once you master accuracy, you can start working on speed now and slowly shorten the amount of questions you run out of time on. Eventually, you'll get a perfect score. In order to master reading on the SAT, you have to understand one important concept, and that's there was always one right answer choice. Always one right answer choice. There was never debate over what the right answer is. All the wrong answer choices are definitely wrong, and the only right answer choice is definitely the right answer choice for every single question. I know this is obvious for math, but for reading and writing questions too, it's guaranteed that there's only one right answer choice. There's never debate over what the right answer is. Think about this. In the decades of history of College Board, there has never been a wrong question where there was debate over what the actual answer choice was. There was always clearly one right answer choice. Because College Board would get sued if they made a wrong question, like a bad question. Because students would be like, you ruined my future because you made this question bad. Or colleges would look at the SAT scores of students to get an accurate representation of students' abilities. They would lose trust in the SAT because the SAT's score wouldn't be accurate anymore. Like, it wouldn't be an accurate representation of students' abilities if the questions on the test was bad, right? So there has to be absolutely one right answer choice for every single question on the SAT, including the reading and writing questions on the SAT. So we can take advantage of this because there has to be a way for them to verify themselves that, okay, this answer choice is definitely the only correct one. How do they actually do that? Here's the secret. Whatever the right answer choice is, every single word in that correct answer choice has to be directly in the text somewhere. So let's say A is the correct answer choice. I'm not saying that it is because I don't even remember this question, but let's just say it was. Okay? Let's say A is the correct answer choice. Every single word in here should be in the text. Like, find the distributions. It should be some kind of synonym or a demonstration maybe of this phrase in the text somewhere. Same thing, more irritating as time went on. So you should be able to see more irritating somewhere in the text. As time went on, it became more irritating. You should be able to find like a synonym or a demonstration of that in the text somewhere. If you can't, that's the wrong answer choice. So with this mindset, every wrong answer choice should be wrong because there's at least one word in the wrong answer choice that's not in the text directly. And the answer choice that's correct is correct because every single word in the correct answer choice not only answers the question, obviously, but every single word is also somewhere in the text. Okay? And that's the mindset you should have. Think like this creates safety nets, okay? For let's say A was actually the right answer choice, but you picked C. Okay? And C was the wrong answer choice. For you to do that, you had to mess up twice. Okay? You had to think that the right answer choice was wrong. Meaning, though every single word was actually in the text somewhere, but you thought there was at least one word that wasn't in the text somewhere in A. Okay, so you messed up there because you eliminated A, even though it's correct. You also messed up in picking C because you thought that every single word in C was in the text, even though there was at least one word that wasn't. So you have to mess up twice to get a question wrong. It's really hard to mess up twice in one question. Okay, we're gonna forget about the hardest questions. Okay, we're talking about like the easier questions that you actually have time to do. It's really hard to mess up twice on those, okay? Like, if you just make sure you properly understand the text, like, I definitely understood every single word in here accurately. It's really hard to get a question wrong. It's pretty much impossible for you to get a question wrong, as long as you take advantage of that. Because you have to mess up twice to get a question wrong. So just take advantage of that, okay? If you find that none of the answers are wrong, it's because you missed something in the text. You have to like, make sure you find out what you forgot, what you missed in the text. That way you can answer the question accurately. Again, I'll go way more in depth into this in future videos, but this is just to give you an idea, like how I can guarantee I get every single reading and writing question correct that I actually have time to do, is I take advantage of the fact that whatever the right answer is, every single word has to be in the text somewhere, and all the wrong answer choices, there has to be at least one word that's not in the text. That means you should read all the answer choices and eliminate all the wrong ones, and verify that the correct one is actually correct by making sure every single word is in the text. Okay, so pause this video and try solving this question. This is actually, it's a hard difficulty question. But honestly, like, I probably wouldn't skip this question because it looks pretty easy, at least for me, because the answers are really short. But pause this video and try solving it. I'm going to be solving this question. Like, I've pretty much forgotten this question. I don't remember the answer. So you get to see me trying to solve this question pretty much for the first time. And like my mindset when I'm doing this. Okay, so pause this video, try solving this. Hopefully you had a chance to solve this. Now try to compare how you just solved it, like the entire process you used from like how you were reading the question to picking the answer choice to how I'm about to do it. Okay,
Hopefully I can actually get the correct answer. We'll see. So researchers recently found that disruption, so this is definitely some kind of study because it's researchers, right? Found that disruptions to an enjoyable experience. Okay, what does enjoyable experience means? Okay, it literally tells us like a short series of advertisements during a. Okay, so that's like the interruptions, right? So like when you're enjoying a television show, a TV show, and advertisements come up that disrupts the enjoyable experience, often increase viewers' reported enjoyment. Okay, that's interesting. That actually makes sense, right? Because if you have an unpleasant experience and then like that goes away and you have a more pleasant experience with on the show, you probably rate the show higher because of the advertisements because like the show rescues you from the unpleasant experience. I don't know if that made sense, but that's what's going through my head. Suspecting that disruptions to an unpleasant experience would have the opposite effect. So before it was when it was enjoyable experience, they enjoyed it more. So if it's an unpleasant experience, the opposite effect means they would enjoy it less, right? I think that's what it's saying. So the researchers had participants listen to construction noise. Okay, I'm assuming that's the unpleasant experience for 30 minutes. Yeah, it's really unpleasant, and anticipated that those. Okay, so it's probably going to ask us like what did they anticipate? Right, those whose listening experience was frequently interrupted with short breaks of silence would thus enjoy find the unpleasant experience even more unpleasant, basically. Okay. So that's the answer that came up from my head. Now let's look for the answer choices. Find the disruptions more irritating. So that's actually wrong. This is a tricky answer choice. Find the disruptions. We're not looking at disruptions. We're finding the overall reported enjoyment. Okay, after increased views, reported enjoyment. Whose listening experience would frequently we anticipate that those whose listening experience like the overall listening experience. It's not just saying the disruptions themselves. Obviously, they find the disruptions like even in the enjoyable experience, they probably find the disruptions themselves unenjoyable. So it's not anything to do with the disruptions. It's the overall experience, or probably like the construction noise. We're looking at like how do they find the construction noise enjoyable or not. So that's not it. So basically, the disruptions that's not in the text. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Okay, let's look at B. Find the listening experience as more. So far that's great. Like rate the listening experience, which is what we're looking for. Listening experience that's in the text as more negative. Yeah. So like that's in the text, like opposite effect, right? And then before it was enjoyable. So that's a demonstration. So before they found it more enjoyment, and if this has an opposite effect, that means that it would be less enjoyable. So that's directly in the text. So you can point to this word and point to this and say, yeah, it's definitely the text. Then those whose listening experience was uninterrupted. Okay, so it's basically much saying like with this extra note, like with the suspect that these disruptions they cause the opposite effect, and that's perfectly explains it. Because if the people who didn't have the disruptions reported it being like more enjoyable than the people that did have the disruptions, that means that it's the disruptions that caused the the more unpleasant experience, which is the opposite effect. So that makes perfectly sense. Every single word is definitely in the text for me. Okay, hopefully that made sense. Okay, let's look at C. Because we want it, just because we think B is the right answer doesn't mean that we pick it. We need to make sure, because then we'll take advantage of the fact that you have to be wrong twice. Because maybe I got B wrong. Maybe I misread something in here, and that's why I got B wrong. So actually, maybe C with these answers. So I'm gonna actually read through C and D and guarantee that B is definitely right. Because I'm gonna take advantage of the fact that there's only gonna be one right answer choice. Okay. Rate the experience of listening to construction noise. Okay, as lasting for. Okay, it doesn't say anything about time at all. I mean, it says like you're gonna listen for 30 minutes, but it never says anything about like rating it less or more time. Okay, we're only looking at how did the perceived enjoyment change, not looking at less or time. So we can just eliminate C right away. Okay, perceive the volume of the. Okay, nothing about volume. That's wrong. Okay, so the answer is definitely B. Hopefully that makes sense. So I eliminated the wrong answers by finding at least one word. Actually, I only found one, like disruptions, less time, and volume. Like I found those words. As soon as I found those words, I just stopped reading the answer choice to save time. But I found a word that wasn't in the text, so I eliminated those. And for B, I verified every single word in here was directly in the text. As long as you do that for every single question, I guarantee you can definitely do this because like we're gonna forget about the hard questions. Only the easy questions that you have enough time to handle. Just do this for every single one of them. Okay, that pretty much guarantees because you have to mess up twice. Technically you have to mess up 3 times. You have to misunderstand the text somehow. For you to actually pick up an answer choice, it's probably because you either misunderstood the text or you misunderstood a word in the answer choice. Like one of those is usually from the text though. So you have to mess up like really 3 times. You have to misunderstand the text, and you have to think that the wrong answer was right, and you think that the right answer was wrong. You mess up 3 times to get an answer wrong. That's really, really hard to do. As long as you make sure like you're aware of that fact and you actually like try to prevent from doing that. It's really hard, especially for an easier question. It's really hard to do. Hopefully that gave you an idea of how I make sure that I got every single question that I did do correct. And obviously, what I just mentioned doesn't apply to grammar questions. Grammar questions is its own process, which I have videos out on my YouTube channel right now about grammar questions. Definitely watch those. But this works for every other type of question other than grammar in the reading writing sections, for transitions, bullet points, even vocab, and all the reading comprehension questions. But I do have specific things that I apply to specific types of questions, like there's specific ways to solve transition questions, specific ways to solve graph questions, command and evidence questions, and so on and so forth. So I'll be making future videos about the process I use to solve those questions specifically. However, what I showed with you earlier is the overarching process I use for all the questions, basically. And finally, here are 3 things that previous students of mine have messed up on that I want you to keep in mind so it doesn't happen to you. The first thing is don't feel relaxed. This is a big one, okay? Because a lot of you are not going to be doing the 9 hardest questions on the test. And that's going to seem way easier. You're going to have more time to do the easier questions. You're going to feel relaxed, naturally. Now, I don't want you to feel relaxed. I want you to be fighting for your life. Every single second counts. I want you to try your best to understand every single word the first time you read it. Don't feel relaxed when you're doing tests just because you're trying out the strategy. Okay, it should be the exact same as previously. Okay. Second thing is skip questions. Okay, you have to be trigger happy of skipping. Okay, don't spend 10 minutes on one question. Okay, this is a horrible thing to do. Don't do it. So skip questions and don't spend 10 minutes on one question. Your goal is for at any given time in the module, you are currently working on the question that takes the least amount of time to solve. That means that if you're currently working on a question and it's taking a long time or you get stuck, and there's probably another question out there that you can solve in a faster amount of time than it takes for you to finish up the current question you're on, work on that other question. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. I want you to work on the question that takes the least amount of time at any given moment. Okay, you need to learn how to skip questions. Or else, if you spend 10 minutes on one question, you're going to ruin the rest of the test because you won't have time to solve the other questions if you spend 10 minutes on one question. Obviously, learn how to skip questions. The last thing, which is probably the most important, is don't do this strategy for the first time on a official test. This is a horrible idea, okay? Just in general, actually, you should never be trying anything new on an official test. You should never be trying anything new on a official test, ever, okay? You want the official test to be comfortable. You've done this thing multiple times, and you're just doing it one more time on an official test. That's what it should feel like for an official test, okay? If you don't have a chance to do practice tests, I want you to do practice tests, by the way. You don't even have to do an entire practice test. Just do the reading section. Just like spend an hour and 4 minutes doing the reading and writing portion of a practice test, and just get used to the strategy before you take an official test. And honestly, if you don't have time to take a practice test, I would just forget this video. Don't do anything I'm talking about and just do what you've been doing on the official test. But if you have time to take 1 or ideally 2 practice tests to get used to the strategy, then you should feel comfortable enough to do it on an actual test. Things can go very wrong if you're not comfortable with it and you don't know how to navigate around the process and everything. So just do some practice tests, okay? At least 1. Okay, before the test. I know I'm recording this video right before the September test, so just at least do 1 practice test. That's all I'm asking. Okay, just a quick recap of what we went over in this video. Accuracy matters a lot more than speed, and because of that, you should be okay with running out of time, because this will give you tons of extra time back to work on a much easier test. And your goal is to get all the questions that you do have time to do correct by verifying your answer and taking advantage of the fact that you have to mess up multiple times to get an answer wrong. And if you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing. I have a lot more coming soon. My plan is to completely revolutionize the way SAT prep is done, and this is just the beginning.